Eagles make a trade. They get Golden Tate, and they move on from here. Coming out of the bye, they'll have a new weapon. What's the best way to use the weapon? ESPN.com, NFL Nation, Michael Rothstein covers the Lions, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Michael, welcome aboard, man. Short notice. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. How you guys doing?
We're doing well. I think the Eagle fans are excited, and they got a new toy to play with. How good of a toy does Carson Wentz have right now?
Listen, they should be excited. Golden Tate is a very good receiver. He excels kind of in the short to intermediate game, off of screens, and there's really no better receiver in the league, certainly no better healthy receiver in the league since Albert Wilson's hurt, at yards after the catch, at making defenders miss. That's what Golden Tate has done, and he's done it for a long time, and he's done it really well for a long time. And listen, he's a good. You see a lot of guys that are short, medium route guys that, frankly, they don't always play all the time because they get hurt. They take a lot of hits. Golden Tate has done a fantastic job of keeping himself healthy. He didn't miss a game in 4+ years in Detroit, and he had over 90 catches every year, over 1,000 yards in 3 of those 4 years. He was on pace for over 90 catches and over 1,000 yards again. He led the Lions in receptions and yards this year at the time of the trade. He's a good player. He's one that, frankly, I've been trying to figure out why the Lions let him go. I mean, there is the obvious of he's on an expiring contract. They got a third-rounder back for him, so if they felt like they weren't going to re-sign him, that's a third-rounder this year versus a potential comp pick in 2020. But Detroit's only a game out of first place in the NFC North, and they play at Minnesota and at Chicago the next 2 weeks. So, sure, if you lose those next two, you can't exactly trade Golden Tate at that point. You're stuck with them.
Michael, where is the best – where is he most comfortable? I mean, because you got Aguilar here who excels in the slot. You've got Matthews whose best spot is the slot. And we keep hearing, well, that's where Tate does his best work. Is he a guy that can excel on the outside, or is he a guy that's does his best work in the slot?
He's great in the slot. He's fantastic in the slot. He's a dynamic receiver in the slot. But he can play on the outside as well. The first 2.5 years he was in Detroit, he played mostly on the outside. He was out there a lot. Really, this year, more than any other, he went in the slot, and that was effective. He can play any receiver spot. He doesn't have blazing speed, but he knows how to get open. And he's a guy that he can handle things on the outside. He can catch deep passes. He can catch intermediate passes. He'll have zero problem on the outside as a receiver. None whatsoever.
What's the biggest concern? And I don't want to paint this as anything negative. I think overwhelming the reaction today in Philadelphia has been through the roof positive. But you mentioned there's a reason beyond maybe the salary in which he's gone. So not even looking at it from a negative light, just what would be the biggest concern you've watched him play up close and personal that Eagles fans might have with Golden Tate?
Whether he's still – I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. I would say maybe whether he's still dynamic on the outside. Because when he got here and he was doing that, he was a little bit younger. And now he's 30, and he's been in the slot often. So he might be more comfortable in the slot now. That would be my biggest concern, is that maybe there's some overlap with some of what the Eagles already have. But listen, you can't have too many offensive weapons. And he's a guy that's reliable, too. Like I said, he hasn't missed a game since coming to Detroit, and that was 4.5 years ago. He's also a guy that's going to be good in your locker room. He's going to bring energy. He's got a fire to him that, frankly, not many other players on the Lions had outwardly. And that's something that he's got a panache to him that I think fans really like. But it also there's a confidence level there that I think that other players feed off of as well. And I think that helps teams late in games. I mean, he's made a ton of big plays, a bunch of game-winning plays for Detroit in his 4+ years here. I don't know how, other than you might lose him in 3-4 months. To me, that would be the biggest negative for the Eagles, is that this maybe might be a 4 or 5 month rental.
Just a quick thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah. A 4 or 5 month rental,
which is fine.
That would be my biggest concern.
And I think the majority of people realize that the addition of his talent, even if it's for 4 or 5 weeks, the final second half of the Eagles season, it's okay. But it sounds like as you're laying out where he was most productive and how productive he was in the slot position, that he's good enough where other people make the adjustment. Meaning, yes, you can move him around and that's a benefit to it, but his home should at least start in the slot, and now it's on lesser talent to kind of figure it out on the outside. Is that accurate, kind of how you're laying it out?
Potentially. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm an expert on the Eagles' offensive staff or offensive personnel, rather. So I can't really give.
None of us here are either. So you're in good company.
but I think that if I'm the Eagles, I start there because I know how productive he is, and you have guys maybe that have a little bit more speed than he does that you can put on the outside. And you go from there, but I think he's a guy you can move around. You can move him inside, you can move him outside, and I think you can be comfortable with him in either one of those spots. That would be just my take on it, because that's what the Lions did for a long time, really, before this year, when they used him a lot more as a slot guy than really, to my recollection, before. But it had been trending that way for him for a while over the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, and right now, you talk about not being an expert on this Eagle offense. I'm not sure Doug Peterson is an expert right now. They can't figure out what the problems are, but a lot of it seems that they just don't have that. Some people would say the guy that's in Detroit right now, LeGarrette Blount, they don't have that kind of guy to close a game out. Or they lost Torrey Smith, and then Mike Wallace got hurt. They don't have the guy that can pop the top off. And some people who might question this move would say, well, does Golden Tate really pop the top off? Is he an explosive, big play guy?
Yes, he can be. It's just not going to be the same type of big play that you're used to with the 70-yard reception where like 40 yards of that is in the air. It's more of the, hey, he's going to maybe catch a 5-yard screen, a 5-yard slant or a bubble screen and take it for 25 yards. He's done that. He does that with some regularity. Like, that's not an uncommon thing. And his hands are some of the best hands in the NFL. So if you throw it to him, yeah, he has 5 drops this year. But if you throw it to him, usually he's catching it if he can get his hands on it. And that's a really big value point for him. He is one of Matthew Stafford's biggest third down weapons and a guy that really moved the chains for Detroit in his 4.5 years here. So he's a guy that, yeah, he can be an explosive, game-changing player. He has shown that throughout his career. He's shown that in big moments. The moment that really stands out to me is a couple years ago in Minnesota. The Lions kick I think it was 58-yard field goal to go to overtime, and then they get the ball in overtime and drive down the field. And so much of that work was Tate, including Tate scoring a touchdown on a pretty big reception where he actually flipped into the end zone. Kind of got chastised a little bit for it, but that was a huge win. That win propelled the Lions to the playoffs well down the road. But he's that type of player. If you need a big play in a big spot, more often than not, he's going to do that for you. And, I mean, that goes back to his Seattle days with the Hail Mary on Monday night that got so much attention for so many years. Remember, he was the guy who caught the ball on that play.
Replacement refs. Michael Rothstein covers the Lions, NFL Nation, ESPN.com here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Thank you, Michael. Great stuff.
Hey, no problem. Anytime.